Okay, so Tess, there's a lot of questions in there.
Yes, we have a lot of relevant questions. Do you want me to just start from the top and try and cover
I
some of these
guess that's the
questions?
best way to do it.
Okay, Thomas Hendricks asks, I do a lot of video production for a local hospital, but I don't want to work for the hospital. Could I apply for a grant, or would I have to get the hospital department I work for to apply? I
So, if you don't mind, I think I'll dive into that one. I would say that it is best to have your hospital, because it's probably a nonprofit, be the lead applicant, but you could partner with them, and you could sub out your services for that video production. Now, I would say that would probably be a valid expense in the narrative, and Chris could probably verify that that would be, as long as that technical service is being used to generate video for healthcare education, then it should be a valid expense inside of the application. Chris?
Yeah, that's a great point. And USD, or this particular program, is actually a little bit more wide open than traditional grant programs. They do allow some for-profits and things of that nature, but certainly it's going to be driven. Typically, the lead applicant has to be an organization for sure, no individuals, and certainly a healthcare provider is going to be your typical go-to scenario. This particular case seems like it would be more of a, this would happen via contract with the funds. But do note the primary purpose for these funds is actually to get the equipment in place. So unlike other grants out there, it won't fund for the actual telemedicine delivery. However, just on the distance learning and the telehealth side, they do allow what they call for a capital asset acquisition when it comes to learning software or telemedicine pieces. So there's a chance you can make the case for something like that video production within the that particular category, which is limited to 15% of the budget. But do note that the bulk of the funding does have to be used on actual equipment and not for personnel, training, and the other things you might see with a grant like other grant programs out there.
Okay, one more question. What would be the best resource to find grants coming up? And basically, I'm not sure if he's asking where should he go next after he's done
because
watching
let's
this
say
stream.
it sounds like this might be someone who is like, wow, this grant's great, but it's going to open up in April, and I only have 60 days, and they might feel like they might not be able to complete the entire process. And can you also, with that question, also can you talk about preparation and timeline? Is it too late already? I know it hasn't opened yet. It's open for 60 days. Timeline-wise, and Philip, I know you've done this a couple times. What advice do you have for people who want to go after this grant?
Okay, so we did have a presentation on this, but very quickly I can go through some of the points. You want to start getting your partners together. So you're looking for some things to consider for the USDA Distance Learning Telemedicine Grant. So knowing what sites you'll be participating with. Now, what we call a hub and spoke model. So you might be in an urban center, a city, and you want to help out your rural partner hospitals or your rural clinics. So getting everybody together in a meeting and saying, okay, you want to participate, give me your site address, and that will help determine your score, which is stuff that Chris and I can help you with. Can you go to the next slide?
How many people do we have? Yes.
Okay, so the Rusty DLT, like I said before, it is a match. They want to make sure that you're putting in some money, a little skin in the game. And now they have new rules. You can purchase equipment with 3-year cloud service from a certified vendor. Zoom, RingCentral, VC, Univago. These are different types of vendors that have that ability to sell that cloud service, and what that allows you to get a bigger bang for your buck over time. Focus on the narrative. What are you trying to achieve? So, for example, right now the USDA not only is doing a telemedicine and distance learning, but they're really focused a lot on giving money to organizations to stop the opiate addiction, getting that word out, why to stay off of Oxycontin and heroin and those types of things. So the USDA is really putting forth a lot of effort into that. Also, delivering mental health for veterans is a big initiative for theirs because they're out in rural America, and allowing students to connect for education, and then our old favorite telestroke services. So people having strokes out the rural hospitals don't have access to those world-class neurologists. They now do, so they can help save lives very quickly. Next. So one of the things you're looking for, collaboration. So when you start talking about this, so maybe you get your partners together, you get your idea, you get your narrative, you built it. Now you got to go and ask somebody in the IT department, hey, will you help me if I win this thing? Because you might not have the technology how to get it out there hooked up. And then one of the last things you want to make sure is, or one of the first things, is make sure that the C-suite, your CEO, your CIO, maybe your CMO, Chief Nursing Officer, Chief Medical Officer, that the C-suite is on board because somebody's going to have to commit some money to that investment overall for the plan. Do we have one more?
That's it.
Oh, that's it. So that's my advice. Coming up with those quick things to look for will help you determine whether or not you're going to make it. Now, I want to answer one more question, though. You asked about additional funding resources. There's another organization called HRSA, HRSA. They run stuff all year long. Chris can help you with that as well. Chris writes HRSA grants. The one we're concentrating on right now is USDA DLT, but HRSA's out there all year long.
Very interesting. Okay, how else are we doing with
Corey asked about firefighters. He said, would a training system for rural firefighters qualify?
Well, I don't know about DLT.
What's that?
A training system for rural firefighters.
Yeah, I mean, that would be tough. I mean, when they talk about distance learning in the context of this grant, there's a thing of teacher and students involved. And when they're talking on telemedicine, they're talking about actual telemedicine delivery, the delivery of care. So training, particularly any type of continuing education, things of those, they could be secondary use cases in some cases, but they it wouldn't be fundable directly. Now, talking about other grant programs, there is a grant program available in the fall, Assistance to Firefighter Grants, $350 million available, thousands of awards made every year, where there's grants to both outfit, those trucks, and also to, do different types of regional collaboration projects, and certainly training is a piece of that as well.
So when was that going to be opening?
Typically opens in the fall with some type of deadline between November and January. But you typically see it open sometime, probably, usually on the early side, November, on the late side, December, January.
Thank you for that. Well, we'll have to keep in touch then. As the major ones are opening up, we want to make sure Tess, we would like to be a resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
To keep people informed. Tess is our social media manager.
And see if this could work for your customer
if we can keep in constant contact with you, if you will, and be able to deliver that information to our audience, bring you guys on to talk about it, because I think talking through it and having the professionals on really helps people get prepared in advance, which was the whole point of this. Because I think what I really want to do is, for those of you out there, anyone who's interested, we want to figure out if you are the right candidate, because if you are, then it's worth setting up a strategy meeting. 100%. Then it's worth meeting with, Rusty or Chris here or Philip and myself and our team. Then it's worth taking your time, reaching out and doing all of the steps. So that's kind of like where we want to be, because we need to prepare in advance. Those 60 days can fly by just so quickly. So that's what we're trying to do. And let's just keep the questions rolling. Do we have any more, or are we just...
Let's see if there's any other that we haven't covered. Active shooter training programs. That's an interesting one.
Okay, so I can answer that one. So in hospitals, an active shooter program is education of what to do in the event somebody shows up with a gun.
Yes.
Now, there's all sorts of mannerisms for using this technology to educate all around the region. So you could potentially write that with the narrative. That would be very innovative, that you're going to be educating individuals in the region about active shooter. So you probably could make an argument for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good one. Now, let's take that making that argument for it and just suss that out a little bit more. So we're talking about a hospital making an argument to create an education program that requires equipment to live stream and broadcast the message or do distance learning with training.
Or you could have an entire school district publicizing to every school using PTZOptics cameras into auditoriums, educating children on how to combat an active shooter environment. So the school district, we just had this in Titusville area school district in Pennsylvania, $440,000 was awarded to educate the schools in the region. So it's all about education, it had nothing to do with telemedicine. So now you use that narrative, we're going to educate all the children what to do if somebody shows up with a gun in all the rural schools. That's a distance learning and education narrative. That's not a telemedicine narrative.
Yeah, that actually happens. My mom's a teacher, and they have that type of training.
Very nice. And they need equipment in order to make it more effective.
It's a shame it's the world we live in.
Yeah, it is the world we live in. But you want to, and that's the other thing exactly, Philip, that I think one of the main parts of it is, let's say you're a rural school district and you don't have anybody who's an expert on active shooter training. The point is, and you guys can kind of chime in here, is that you create a relationship with a hospital or a university that has an expert in the field. And Chris, if I'm understanding you correctly, they're not going to pay for you to hire those experts to pay them for their hours on time, but they will pay for the video conferencing technology to enable you to go those reaches. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. So they're not paying for the personnel and some of those. This is really for the startup equipment. Now, what I would note is that when you're looking at this, and Philip makes up some great points here in terms of how you might approach it. But that's part of the consultation we can certainly provide as well. Is if you had something like that going on, it may not be something you want to play up as a primary use case. Again, the key with this grant is 51% of the use for that equipment must qualify as distance learning or telemedicine delivery. So what you do with it the other 49% of the time, if you're going to leverage it for active shooter education or other type of project, that's absolutely A-OK. But we'd want to consult with you on the specific elements that you want to put to the forefront as the primary use cases and making sure they fit the definition of distance learning telemedicine. For example, person earlier with the fire department, it's not a use case for training. If you have EMTs, whether it's ambulance or firefighters or whatever the case may be, and they're actually leveraging equipment, for example, pre-hospital triage, leveraging video in that capacity, well, that might be a version of telemedicine you can make as a primary use case. And while the equipment was on site, you might use it for training and other purposes, as long as we can make the case 51% of the time you're doing it to meet the definition of distance learning and telemedicine.
Wonderful. Well, one quick thing I'll throw in there, and again, give everybody some time. We actually have a live giveaway that we do every single week, and we almost forgot about it, but we didn't forget about you guys. Here we go. This is the live giveaway. It has ended. There was 205 entries, and I just go over here and I hit draw winner, and they have to be live in order to win, so sometimes we have to redraw a few times. But we got Mark Euler.
Mark Euler. And
let's just give him a moment to come up, and we will go ahead and stick with our show. If Mark's not here, we'll draw another winner.
Hanging out in the chat, waiting for Mark. We got to give it a little bit of time. Does in-kind equipment already purchased count towards the 15% match for the grant?
Sorry, that's an interesting question.
So yes. It does.
Mark Euchre.
Really?
Yes. So that's actually how we were able to start our program, knowing that when we purchased our initial cameras, that investment was seen as our match component. And now, according to some sources, investments in the cloud service, as long as it's done in a 3-year bucket, can also be used against your 15%.
And if I could just add a note in there as well, the way they're looking at it in the past couple of years is that in order for that to count against your match, you have to have made the purchase after the application deadline for that year. So that's just a quick note for folks. So, if it opens and it's due 60 days, if you're purchasing before or during the application period, but not the due date, that's the key piece. You want to purchase it after the due date for it to count.
Now, after the due date of 2017 application or 2016?
Of the year you're applying in that you're trying to receive funding for. So say we had a made-up deadline here of May 31st, okay, for this 2017 cycle. You put an application in, and you submit an application as of June 1st of this year. Any equipment you purchased could count towards the match if you were approved for funding later this year.
Gotcha.
Because the announcements for the awards will probably come towards December, towards the end of the year.
Okay. Very interesting.
And one other note on that. Oftentimes you hear don't rely on the grant to start a telemedicine program, and that's the message, because otherwise you might not get it started if you're always waiting for money. It's kind of like waiting for the lottery ticket. But use the tools that you can to improve it, but don't just wait, because you might not ever get it working.
Very good question. I mean, but this is not like playing the lottery. I mean, I think that with Chris here, he's going to be able to give you he has a whole validation process where he's going to give a company a really good picture of whether or not it's even worth it. Right, Chris?
That's right. Because it's one of the few grant programs out there with what we call objective scoring. I mean, almost 99% of grant program out there, reviewers review the application, and almost all the scoring is subjective to that person's opinion on how you're meeting the review criteria. In the case of this particular program, the objective criteria, we can run the sites through the census data. It's a very specific, peculiar process, but you want to make sure you do it right. Get the numbers for that, the economic need based on the school lunch program, how much match you put up, what they call leverage factors in there as well. 15% is the minimum, but the more funds you put up, the more points they actually give you for what they call leverage. And then if you're in areas that have what they call strike force areas as designated by the USDA, or tribal jurisdictions are involved, there's 15 bonus points in play. We can run all those numbers, and we know if you meet a certain threshold across those numbers, your chances are going to skyrocket, and that regardless of really how you do in the subjective parts of the application, you're going to stand a pretty good chance of funding. And some of those subjective components, the need for services, how innovative the project is, one of them is cost effectiveness. And certainly with PTZOptics and the folks here, that's going to be a key, cost per site, for example, is going to be a key metric. You look at the evaluation criteria, and folks are going to do quite well, in my opinion, in that particular piece when it comes to the scoring as well.
Absolutely.
Great. So, I mean, it seems like we've really done a good job of explaining everything. I'm sorry for showing everyone the inside of my tongue/mouth there. That was a little bit over the top, but we showed remote camera control.
Funky going on in there.
Yeah, I think Patrick said I was dying, but Rusty, I want to give you a quick moment here before we wrap things up. I don't think you really got to show us those mobile cases.
Sure. Okay. So let's start with the big one. It has a lot more features to go over. This case, there's one right here, closed up. It has a telescopic handle, and wheels on the bottom, so it's very easy to take from place to place with yourself. It does fit in the overhead storage bin in the airplane, and when you open it up, so here we have at the top we have a web camera that is adjustable. Here on the left side, we have the battery meter. It tells you how much battery life you have left. This is a lithium-ion battery inside, and it will do video conferencing for about 6 hours, which is actually a very long time. There's other cases out there, but majority of them will run maybe 2 to 3 hours max. And if you're taking your case and doing several home visits throughout the day, then you might end up having to find an outlet inside of somebody's house to charge your equipment on, which is not the best case scenario. We have a 15.6-inch touchscreen, and this is actually not a tablet. This is a full i7 PC built inside of this case. Over here on the side, we have the power switch, and we have a cellular data plan switch. The cases come with Wi-Fi as a basis. You can upgrade to a 4G cellular plan, so you always have connectivity. This will also allow you to not have to get on a patient's Wi-Fi in their house if you're doing home visits as well. So we have a couple input panel inputs on the side, a display out if you're doing a presentation, or if you're in a clinic setting that has a large display on the wall, you can have a second monitor showing X-rays or any results from like ECG tests or something along those lines. Down here at the bottom, we have a 7-port USB hub, which allow you to have 6 or 7 peripherals plugged in all the time. If you don't want to be constantly plugging in peripherals, you could run into some minor driver issues or some conflicts that may kind of make your consultation not run as smooth as possible. So we have a echo canceling speakerphone and also a washable keyboard with a mouse pad on it. The case is around 27 pounds, and this particular case does not have satellite data plan, but there is an option to have an external cellular box that will Wi-Fi connect to this case. So then if you're extremely rural, then there will be a satellite version as well.
And the prices of these cases? We're getting a question on the chat on that.
Sure. So the large case MSRP is $15K. That does not include the medical peripherals, but the light version, which is the smaller version, is much more affordable. MSRP is around $5,000, and that includes the service plan as well for the unit. This one is i7 or i5 versions on the 12-inch tablet as well. And between both size portable kits, there is a ability to custom pick your peripherals and have a custom foam insert to go along with those peripherals as well.
Wonderful. Well, that has been a nice long show.
Yeah.
I think we delivered a lot of great information to our viewers.
A lot of helpful information.
I think we learned that we have to inform our viewers about these upcoming events. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. I mean, we were trying.
Yeah.
But there's more grants coming all the time.
Now we know to keep an eye out.
And we know who to call.
And so do our viewers.
And we'll bring you guys in again next time there's a major event. Maybe when that big firefighter one comes up, we'll bring some firefighters in. I know that they do a lot of training. It's such an important part of our community. So thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this show.
And thank you for joining us, to our guests.
I see we have video link here. Bruce does some really great mobile carts as well. That's a kind of a specialty. So that's it, guys. That's our show. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next Friday. Next Friday, we are interviewing Easy Live, the very first ever cloud-based live streaming video production software in the world. And I'm really excited. Actually, Mark, you won a free premium license for that. So give it a go. And thank you to the whole panel. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thanks again.
And that's all, folks. We appreciate your participation in the chat room and can't wait to host our next informative Q&A session. Your questions drive the conversation forward for live streaming professionals around the world. Until next time, happy streaming.
Happy streaming. And don't forget to subscribe.
Are we still streaming?
Yes, we are. Still have to end it.
It's Friday, Friday, Give everybody a nice singing song.
Happy Friday, everyone. 1 hour and 1 minute.